Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Vedic Astrology Podcast. My name is Fiona Marques, and it is the middle of May, which means it is time to think about the sun getting ready to enter into the Rashi Gemini. So we're going to take the chance to explore what Gemini is all about and how it might play for different ascendants during this transit. But before we do that, we should have a look at all of the movements and changes that are happening during this solar month of Gemini. So Gemini begins with the sun entering into Gemini between the 20th, the 21st of May. The sun is going to enter into Gemini. And really soon after that, we have a full moon taking place just 3 days after the sun goes in. Then there will be a full moon in Sagittarius at around about 3 degrees of Sagittarius. And then the third thing that happens during this solar month is that Venus is also going to change signs on that same day, changing from Taurus into Gemini. So we're going to have this sort of migration now. Gemini is going to get a lot of stimulation during this month. So first we have the sun going in, then the full moon, and then Venus moving. So that's all happening very much at the beginning of this solar month. And soon after, then Jupiter is also going to move into Gemini. So now we'll have the sun there, we'll have Venus there, and by the 25th of May, we're going to have Jupiter there as well. It's marking quite a long time that it's spent in Taurus. Now it's going to leave all that time it's been with Uranus in Taurus. It's coming into Gemini. That's on the 25th of May. And then we're going to have Mercury also coming into Gemini here on the 3rd of June. So now Sun goes in, Venus goes in, Jupiter goes in, and finally Mercury goes in. And as we know, Mercury owns Gemini. So this is a return for Gemini to one of its signs. And that's really what we're going to be talking about in this podcast, the solar month of Gemini, just talking about how much planetary energy is in Gemini during this solar transit of Gemini. And then we're also going to have a new moon in Gemini, and that will be on the 6th of June. So now there would be 5 planets on that particular day. So a lot of stimulation to Gemini. And then soon after that, Mars is going to leave its home in Aries where it's been with Rahu, and it's going to move into Taurus, take over Jupiter's hot seat. Jupiter's been there for a while, but it's left, and now Mars is coming in. And then finally, towards the end of this solar month, we're going to have both Mercury and Venus change signs right around the 17th of June. So during this whole solar month of Gemini, Mercury and Venus entered Gemini, and they're going to move all the way through that sign of Gemini and enter into Cancer before the sun finishes its solar transit of Gemini. So they will be leaving Gemini and arriving into Cancer around the 17th of June. And then the last thing just to note is that the sun is leaving Gemini between the 20th, 21st. So these are 9 things that are happening. We've got the sun entering, we've got the full moon, Venus entering Gemini, then Jupiter entering Gemini. A little bit later, Mercury's going to enter Gemini, and then we'll have the new moon in Gemini as well. So really action-packed Gemini space. Soon after that, Mars is going to leave Aries, going to Taurus. The 2 friends, Venus and Mercury, are going to leave Gemini and go into Cancer. And then finally, the solar transit will end between the 20th and the 21st of June, which will be our summer solstice. So we're getting to the height of the sun in the sky, peaking as it leaves this sign of Gemini. Okay, so that is the summary of the things that are happening during this month. And it really gives us interest in what is the significance of Gemini? We're going to have so much planetary energy there. What is it really all about? Gemini is an air sign. It's the first air sign. Following the sun through these transits, we've seen it through Aries, which was the first sign and the first fire sign. So very pure impulse and initiative, inspiration to get started. We've seen our first earth sign. The sun has traveled through Taurus, which is maybe the most stabilizing, the most nourishing, grounded earth sign. And now we get to perhaps the most air sign with Gemini. And this means that air signs, they're all about ideas. And as Gemini is an active sign, it's curious about ideas, lots of stimulation for the mind in Gemini, lots of thoughts. And as it is the third sign of the zodiac, we know that it's got that energy of the numerology of number 3. So it's about exploring. It's about learning by doing. It's about experimenting. And it's also about our peers and our connections, finding our place among our peers. So it can be a sign that's very much about communication as well. Now, we talked about Aries was our cardinal sign and Taurus was our fixed sign. Gemini is the first dual sign of the zodiac. And it helps us integrate that impulse that was even more impulsive maybe this year because we had the eclipse and we had the sun going past Rahu during that time. So a lot of energy and inspired impulse. And now we've had the solar transit through Taurus, giving solidity, giving a chance to internalize, as Taurus is a feminine sign, internalize what that impulse really meant and what we want to do with it. And now we're coming out into this dual sign, a chance to communicate about that, what it is that we've learned and what we've reflected on. It's a masculine sign, Gemini, so its perspective is out into the world, into the material world. And it's a Rajasic sign, so it's interested in exchange and transactions. So it's going to give us an opportunity to be very stimulated by ideas and thoughts, but also to be very energized to communicate what we've learned, maybe communicate, as we're talking about the sun going through Gemini, maybe communicate about what we're inspired about. And we might want to connect with like-minded friends, as Gemini is the sign that has the archetype of the two humans. And it is a sign of friendship. So maybe we're also going to be looking to communicate with our friends. Now, for each of the different planets going through Gemini, it has a slightly different effect, whether there's much of a match between the planets and this particular sign. If we think about Gemini and the sun, they both share masculine energy. So that's going to give the sun that support of wanting to interact with the external world, wanting to inspire the external world. And so it might use the skills of Gemini to communicate its vision, a vision that's been gained through Aries and solidified in Taurus, and might be looking for allies and peers to share that inspirational vision with. And we know that Mercury and the sun, they hang around a lot, but they've got a friendly relationship, and this is a friendly kind of sign. However, Mercury is going to enter during the sun's transit here, so that always makes things a little bit more intense for Mercury, being in exactly the same sign as the sun. But Mercury is going to try and help support the sun by providing friends and that inspiration to do that, but maybe even by providing too much inspiration or too much stimulation of ideas, distractions, maybe even trivial thoughts, and perhaps even worries sometimes. Gemini, in some ways, is a good place for the sun to be, but it can be a little bit too much and maybe too trivial sometimes, too much overstimulation. So that's what the sun might experience. Venus is also going to be in Gemini, and we know that Mercury and Venus are both friends. They're both Rajasic. They're going to be transiting through here together, so that always brings a certain sort of Rajasic excitement about ideas. And maybe Venus brings that beautiful, artistic kind of ideas, even maybe making our communication more attractive with Venetian kind of energy. Now, Jupiter is also going to be going through the sign of Gemini. And this is perhaps a little more difficult for Jupiter because it gets starved when it's in Mercury signs, because Mercury signs naturally encourage Jupiter to focus on the details and the mundane and the scientific and the worries. And if you think about what Gemini says about Gemini, he describes it with the word itches. And I think that's a way that Jupiter can get starved in Mercury signs, because when we've got itches, we're never quite comfortable. Jupiter is all about grace and contentment and just the big understanding of everything. And being in Mercury sign can just give those daily irritations of thinking about all of the details and the worries and the concerns, and even just being overstimulated and distracted by trivial ideas. And I think in this transit, they might actually be in planetary war, Mercury and Jupiter, and Mercury's winning that one. So Jupiter may feel a bit overpowered here with a barrage of mundane facts and trivia and worries. Although in another way, it might be nice for Jupiter to get out of Taurus, where it's been in that wet energy of a Venus sign. So maybe it's a nice change. And perhaps it's a chance to communicate wisdom for Jupiter, and it will be there with the Sun, and they are obviously friends, although there is always that pressure when you're in the same sign as the Sun. And finally, Mercury, who owns Gemini, is going to transit through, and naturally, this is a nice match for Mercury. It's an opportunity to communicate, to connect with peers, to catch up on lots of stimulating ideas, and really use the wit and the quickness of Mercury at its best here in this playful sign of Gemini. Now, as we mentioned, all of the planets, Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus, are going to get a bit agitated from being with the Sun. This can really get into the psyche and feel this agitation to be great, to be as great as the Sun, which obviously nobody can be the Sun apart from the Sun. So those other planets feel frustrated that they're not being as great as they think they should be. So it seems to me that there's a lot of energy, which is already a very stimulating mental kind of place, and that might provide a certain amount of frustration in some ways, or a certain overwhelming amount of communication and data that might just be a lot of noise and a lot of thoughts and perhaps a lot of worries, and not a lot of stillness here in Gemini. But we must remember that we also have a couple of other planets changing signs as well. During this solar month of Gemini, Mars is going to move from Aries into Taurus. We already spoke about Mars being in Aries last time. It owns Aries, so it's a great place to get the inspiration. And it was with Rahu during that transit, or it is still with Rahu during that transit. So a lot of impulse in Aries, but it is going to come into Taurus. It's a masculine planet. It's a fiery planet, and it's coming into this feminine earth sign of Taurus. And it obviously, Taurus is right there to offer the opportunity to consolidate after hanging out with Rahu, after following all those planets after the eclipse. So it is, I guess, like a coming into the tavern or something, some kind of place to recover. And Mars is exalted in a feminine earth sign, which is Capricorn. But this particular feminine earth sign is ruled by Venus, and Venus is focused on harmony and comfort and stability. And maybe that's not really the best combination for Mars. The warrior and the general is not really about harmony, comfort, and stability. And plus, Mars is now really tipping from where it would be exalted, heading now towards its debilitation point in Cancer. So it is beginning to lose a bit of that natural receptivity of ease that it gets from being closer to its exaltation point. So I think we can see Mars coming into Taurus as an opportunity to consolidate, although in general it's heading towards signs that are not as naturally supportive. And maybe making the most, if we want to use our Mars this solar month, making the most of creating beautiful plans of that inspiration that Mars has just received in Aries. I guess if we could think about Mars heading into some more difficult signs, what does it want to reflect on as much as Mars can do that? What does it want to reflect on as it makes those journeys into those less natural places in the zodiac? And as well as stimulation to Taurus that we just talked about, we're also going to get some stimulation to Cancer because Venus and Mercury are going to move all the way through Gemini and make their way into Cancer. Mercury likes facts. We just found that out in Gemini. It likes ideas and trivia and distractions and entertaining thoughts, all very stimulating. It likes facts. And Cancer is a bit more of an intuitive, imaginative, emotional sort of sign. So facts and intuition and emotions, it's maybe not quite the most natural mix. And for Venus as well, Venus, it's all about value through relationships. It's got that Rajasic energy, hasn't it? Venus, it likes to transact, to exchange. And Cancer is a Sattvic sign. So even though these are both have an emotional connection, a love kind of connection, Venus is about love, Cancer is about love, so it sounds like a good match. But it's a bit like they're so close together but not quite right. It's like wearing pink and red at the same time, or even blue and green at the same time. Things sound like they're so close it should be good, but actually it's a bit jarring. And maybe Venus is a little bit like this in Cancer because Cancer is so boundaryless that it's hard to exchange and transact in Cancer. So maybe Venus also is a little uncomfortable there. And that will be happening towards the end of this solar month of Gemini. Now, the other thing that is going on is that Saturn remains in Pisces and the nodes remain in the Aries and Libra axis. But the moon, of course, is moving through its own cycle of learning and integration. And on that journey, we had a new moon in Taurus last solar month, and we're having the full moon part of that in Sagittarius just a few days after Solar Gemini starts. And so perhaps the moon being full in Sagittarius, it's offering us the inspirational vision that Sagittarius has. Perhaps we might even feel the grace of Jupiter, which is like an interconnectedness of all knowledge and all philosophies. Maybe we're going to feel the moon capacity to feel that in Sagittarius. Can also involve some self-sacrificing because it's a fire sign, but that might also feel okay to the moon because of being graced with Jupiter's interconnected vision. Perhaps it is okay to sacrifice some of our personal perspective. And so that might be a good thing. So maybe the full moon in Sagittarius is a chance to really connect to the wisdom. I guess this first half of the month is about completing what we started in Taurus, going through Sagittarius as a full moon and ending with a new moon in Gemini on the 6th of June. So this is a bit of what is Gemini energy like, because that's what I think we're all going to be experiencing. So we've had a look in general at what it might mean for each planet that is transiting through. But what does it mean for each ascendant? And there's so many planets transiting through Gemini that we're actually going to have 7 house lords there when there's only 12 house lords. So more than half the house lords are going to be there in Gemini, not including the moon. So once the moon gets in there, that would be 8 house lords. So that is 2/3 of all of everything that we're all trying to achieve and feel some sense of purpose about everything. It's all going to be there. So there really is a lot of stimulation to Gemini. And how's it going to be for your ascendants? Remember that for 7 of our ascendants, their first lord is going to be transiting through this sign. And I guess for Cancer ascendant also at some point will transit through. But if you're a Taurus ascendant, if you're a Gemini ascendant, a Leo ascendant, Libra, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces ascendant, your ascendant lord is in the energy of Gemini this solar month. So something that we might feel for 7 to 8 out of all of the ascendants are going to have their first lord in Gemini. If you happen to have a fixed house ascendant, so those are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, if you are one of those ascendants, then all of your financial lords are going through Gemini because Mercury and Jupiter rule financial houses for fixed ascendants. So for fixed ascendants, it could be quite a financially stimulating month, lots of ideas, lots of communication, maybe a lot of data about your finances. If you have a mutable house ascendant, that is your Gemini itself, for Gemini ascendant, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces, then your first lords are going to be in this sign of Gemini, so they'll be transiting, but all of your angular lords, your fourth lord, the seventh, and the 10th lord are also all going to be transiting through Gemini. So a very activated transit month for those ascendants whose signs are mutable. And for the cardinal houses, which is Aries and Cancer and Libra and Capricorn, there are some Dasthanas in play because depending on who you are, 3rd, 6th, and 12th, so those kind of Dasthana houses, and 9th lord, so the sense of purpose as well. So different ascendants are going to have different feels about what this Gemini solar month is all about, but there's a lot of stimulation. It's hard to say that enough. And Gemini is such an air sign already. It's so stimulating already that there really is a lot to stimulate it here. Okay, so let's have a look at what might be going on for each ascendant, going through beginning in Aries. So if one is an Aries ascendant, Gemini is the 3rd house for Aries ascendant. So there's a lot of stimulation this solar month for the 3rd house of skills, adventure, courage, and peers. And the 3rd house is where we find out where we are in the pecking order, where we fit in with our peers, where we fit in the world. And that's why we use our courage to test ourselves and to have adventures and find out where we fit by trialing ourselves out. So this Gemini solar month for an Aries ascendant is going to be stimulating that 3rd house. If you think about all of these 7 planetary lords are going to be in that 3rd house. So see what that means for you, and all of these you'll need to look at your own chart and see what's in your 3rd house. But if you're an Aries ascendant, the sun is your 5th lord and it's going to be in the 3rd house. So it's a trinal number, the 5th. The sun is the 5th lord in this 3rd house. And we have not only the 5th ruler, but we have the 9th ruler. That is Jupiter rules the 9th house. It's also going to be in there. So that's 2 trinal numbers. And the 7th lord, Venus, is going to be there as well. So some beautiful numbers, 5, 7, and 9. And we know that the sun is perhaps feeling a little overstimulated here in Gemini. And for an Aries ascendant, that's the sun's mission, is creating a legacy. And it's going to be in this place of communication and skills, ideas, and perhaps using that arena of skills and ideas and communication to find their place in the world. So I think it could stimulate talking about our ideas and our vision for whatever legacy it is that you want to create. As it's a 3rd house, maybe it's going to be a month that's more about your siblings, a chance to catch up with your younger siblings. Maybe it's going to bring you some adventures. And you might just feel the grace, feel skillful in a graceful way. And it might encourage you to want to act independently. The sun is obviously a leader. And it's challenging to act independently when there are so many other voices going on in Gemini. So that might be the only downside, is that how does one be seen and heard above the crowd here? So for Aries ascendant, a month of stimulation towards your skills, adventure, your courage, and your peers. For Taurus ascendant, the sun is the 4th lord for all Taurus ascendants, and it is transiting through the 2nd house of a Taurus ascendant chart. So it's the fourth lord in the second house. The fourth lord is an angular lord. We do also have the first lord, Venus, is coming through here, and Mercury is the fifth lord. So we've got some trinal numbers there. And as we said, this is a fixed sign. So they're going to have all their financial lords are also going to be here. The Jupiter and Mercury lords are going to be financial. Although we're talking about the sun being the fourth lord in the second house, we are also talking about the first lord being in the second house. So this second house of resources, responsibilities, and what we talk about is going to be very stimulated this month. And Gemini is a sign of communication. So for Taurus Ascendant, maybe this is a month about speaking. And the only thing to keep in mind is that Jupiter transiting through here is actually the 11th lord for Taurus Ascendant, which is the yoga breaker. And that's just reminding us that Jupiter can get a little stuck in its philosophy because it rules the 8th and the 11th for Taurus Ascendant. So we want to be aware of any sense of self-righteousness or self-importance that's coming from Jupiter and just drop that, just let that go. So the sun here, the fourth lord in the second, it's linking our home and our income. It's linking our sense of inner peace with our responsibilities. Maybe it's a chance when we can make some strides towards property. We've got here the fourth lord of property in the second house of income and responsibility. So maybe some progress there. And the fourth lord is also about learning, and Gemini is such a sign of information. So maybe it's going to be a stimulating month in terms of learning things. And if we just focus on the sun, which would be the fourth lord, we have said that it's pretty stimulated. The sun's going to be pretty stimulated there. And the fourth lord, the sun for a Taurus ascendant, is about emotional acceptance. And we're here in this environment of information, looking for a way to secure our true inner value, the second house. So that could be a theme of the month, a lot of stimulation to resources and responsibilities and the things that we speak about, giving a sense of emotional value here in Gemini. Next up is Gemini Ascendant, who has their first lord traveling through the first house, as so many of us do. But this first lord feels great to be in Gemini. It is there not only as the first lord, but of course it rules the fourth, and Jupiter rules the 7th and the 10th. So this is our mutable sign with all of the angular lords are here in Gemini. And as well as that, the fifth lord, Venus, is there too. And the sun itself is the third lord, and it is also in this first house. So it's linking the first house of ourself with our courage and with our teammates, with adventure. It's a really beautiful combination for communication, for quick learning, and for courage. It's a chance for this third lord that wants to find its place in the world among its peers is going to do that in the world of ideas of Gemini and find out who it is or contribute to this person, to Gemini Ascendant's knowledge of who they are. This is happening in the first house. So that sense of courage and adventure is going to confirm for this person who they are. It's be very validating to that. So an awful lot going on for everybody in Gemini month, but for Gemini Ascendant, an awful lot going on in our sense of self and our sense of who we are and our understanding of ourselves. A lot of stimulation and ideas to that during Solar Gemini. For Cancer Ascendant, the sun in Gemini is actually transiting the 12th house for a Cancer Ascendant, and it is the second lord. The sun is the second lord transiting the 12th house. There is a lovely combination of Venus as the fourth lord and Jupiter as the 9th lord, so giving a sense of grace to our inner contentment. But we have to keep in mind that Venus, although it's the fourth lord, it's also the 11th lord, yoga breaker, and that's because Venus for a Cancer Ascendant can link our happiness, our fourth, with recognition from others and give us a sense that our happiness comes from, in some ways, keeping up with the Joneses or being certified, being accepted, being recognized. So if we notice any stimulation to that, we want to disidentify with our 11th house lord, that is Venus, misleading us into thinking that that happiness is going to be out there in having, doing, and being what everybody else is doing. So this might be a time to think about what we would like to let go of, as this is actually the 12th house. Gemini is the 12th house for Cancer Ascendant. The 12th house is all about losses, but also transcending. It's about spiritual retreating and places of healing like hospitals, and just getting away from all of the hustle and bustle of the marketplace. So perhaps the sun going through the 12th house here, with a whole lot of other planets as well, is giving the opportunity to reflect on what we would like to declutter from our life. And keeping in mind that the next new moon is also going to be here as well. So starting a cycle there too. So something to reflect on. As the sun is the second lord in the 12th house, maybe we're going to want to spend some money on our spirituality, or we might want to spend some money on a retreat. Perhaps we're going to speak about losses or speak about places of transcending, and we'll just want to be compassionate with the self if there's any kind of sense of loss of energy. The 12th is where energetically it's like the veil between the material and non-material is the thinnest, and we might feel that our energy is seeping away a little bit with so many planets in the 12th house. When we think about what the sun is trying to do here, it's the second lord. It's trying to get a sense of its true intrinsic value in this arena of information of Gemini. But really, it's doing that for a sense of connectedness to the divine, as this is the 12th house for Cancer Ascendant. So a lot going on spiritually, perhaps, for Cancer Ascendant this solar month of Gemini. In Leo, we have, in fact, Gemini as the 11th house. So it will be our first lord, Leo, the sun, is going to be in the 11th house. And the 11th house is all about gains and older siblings, but it's also really about making a contribution, like giving all of our contribution, sharing it with others. We have the first lord here, so that's a trine, and we have the fifth lord, which is Jupiter. So a lovely combination of the first lord and the fifth lord. And the 10th lord is here as well. That is Venus. So the 10th lord is in the 11th. So that's also a lovely combination for gains. But as we've mentioned before, we do have the 11th lord here as well. In this case, it's Mercury. Mercury rules the second and the 11th. And Mercury can lead Leos to thinking that they will get recognition from speaking. The second lord is speaking, so it can lead them to talk too much about themselves, or it can lead them to be so responsible about earning and creating a gain, creating a nest egg, that they're committed to that. They feel so responsible to that they're not actually free to pursue their dharma. So watch out for that feeling of either responsibility or talking about the self too much. And it could be a great time of success and gains, because this is all taking place in the 11th. There's just so much stimulation to the 11th house for Leo this month. So that could be very good for gains, but we just want to be wise enough to not attach our ego identity to that, because Leo is about creating a kingdom. So it's like planting the seeds, the right seeds, and it's not really about harvesting them. The harvest is for others. So that's something to keep in mind for Leo Ascendant. And the first lord in the 11th maybe is going to connect you with influential people this month, or activate your social network, your large social network. It could help you express, because the second lord is here and Gemini is such a sign of communication. And we just want to watch out to how much of our own aspirations, our own egoic esteem is wrapped up in this, and be wise enough to see through that. And if we just concentrate on the sun, which is the ascendant lord here, we know the sun's probably going to feel very stimulated. It's trying to take actions to know who it is. That's what the first is all about, is stepping out onto this hero's journey. So taking actions to find out who we are in this environment of ideas, communication, and exchange. And really what we are hoping to achieve in Gemini is a sense of belonging and connection. So these are things to think about for Leo Ascendant. For Virgo Ascendant, Gemini is the 10th house. And once again, we find all of our angular lords here in Gemini for a Virgo Ascendant. So obviously Mercury rules their 10th, but also rules their 1st, and Jupiter rules the 4th and the 10th. And as well as that, we have the 9th lord here, Venus. So there's just a beautiful combination of numbers. The 1st lord, the 4th lord, the 7th, the 9th, and the 10th, they're all together in Gemini, as well as the 2nd lord and the 12th lord. So as the 10th house is all about career, status, activity, and it's our karma baba, our house of action, this could be a solar month that's all about career. But being as the sun is the 12th lord for Virgo Ascendant, maybe this is even interest in doing charitable work or overseas work or doing spiritual practices and contemplation during this month. Maybe that supports one's career or aligns with one's career. And maybe we are thinking about how much to renounce in our career, like how to step away or how to do that as selfless, egoless service in our work. And the sun here has a lot of other planets in Gemini, and it's trying to connect to the divine. That's what the sun is doing for all Virgo Ascendants as the 12th lord. And it's doing that in an air sign of ideas at the moment and communication for the purpose of our 10th house, or our fame, our status, our career. So really linking our connection to the divine with our work and perhaps getting a lot of ideas about how to do that during this very stimulating solar month of Gemini. Now, Libra Ascendant will find that Gemini is the 9th house. And as we said at the beginning, Libra is one of the cardinal signs. So it does have its first lord here. And it does have the 9th lord, Mercury, is also going through Gemini. So a very energy around purpose and meaning. However, there's plenty of Dhisthana houses here. There's the 3, 6, 8, and 11, and 12, actually. So the Libra Ascendant is quite a mixed bag. We need to remember that the sun itself is the yoga breaker for Libra Ascendants. And don't forget that the sun is debilitated in Libras. For Libra Ascendants, we want to have that tip of remembering that the sun is exalted in the 7th house for a Libra Ascendant. So all gains are for others when one is a Libra Ascendant. In this transit, the 11th lord is in the 9th house. So we want to make sure that we're not using our marriage for gains or using our calling, whatever our vocation is. We're not using that for gains. We are perhaps going to find the sun here, the 11th lord in the 9th, with plenty of stimulation, seeking that need for belonging and recognition. It's the 11th lord. In this place of ideas and communication, really motivated to find meaning and purpose. So it's a challenging combination to keep all of those balls in the air for Libra. But maybe one way to think about it is continuing the legacy of one's teacher, the 11th lord in the 9th. Maybe this will be a time when we will be gaining titles more easily. Our 11th lord of titles and recognition is in the 9th house. Maybe you're even going to gain residency in a foreign land, or if you're waiting on a visa or something like that, maybe that would come through. Just keep in mind that there's a lot of distraction here in Gemini, and keep an eye on when those personal goals and aspirations of the 11th lord perhaps get stimulated, and we just want to disidentify with those aspirations that are taking us away from finding meaning in the present moment and in our exchange and service to others. For Scorpio Ascendant, Gemini is the 8th house. And this means we're at another fixed ascendant. So lots of financial houses here, 2, 5, 8, 11, they're all there, as are the 7th and the 10th. So lots of very powerful numbers. And in fact, the sun is the 10th lord going through this 8th house. If one has an interest in the occult, or if you're interested in astrology, you're a Scorpio ascendant, perhaps this is the solar month when that career around the occult or psychology or research or investigation, analysis is going to get quite stimulated. Maybe we'll be using our intuition to make money, perhaps. Or the 8th is also about other people's money. So maybe our work is going to move to being involved in other people's grants or funds. And the 8th is also all about sudden breaks and changes and transformations. So maybe what we do outside of the home is going to experience some sudden change. One thing to keep in mind is that Mercury is the yoga breaker, the 11th lord, so it's involved here. And it is just like we were talking about Taurus. Be careful with any kind of intellectual superiority that one might be feeling. Mercury for Scorpio ascendant can really encourage us to look for recognition for the deep, dark things that we can explore, perhaps the deep, dark emotions or psychological things that we can explore. And the 10th lord is going to be in this 8th house of deep investigation. So although Jupiter is there, so that's good because it's the 5th lord, but Jupiter's a bit weak with this transit. So we want to stay with the light. Mercury can go either way. And here it is in a sign with Jupiter and with the sun, these dharmic, inspiring kind of energies. So we want to stay in the light. And the sun here, as the 10th lord, is getting a lot of stimulation in its mission to do worthwhile actions, the karma lord, in an environment of information and communication for the purpose of, in the 8th, it's really trying to transform any inner trauma or come to true inner peace. So that is what the sun is going to try and do by taking rightful actions here in Gemini during this solar month for Scorpio ascendants. For Sagittarius ascendant, then this becomes the 7th house. And we are once again with our mutable ascendants. So we have all of the angular lords here, 1, 4, 7, and 10, plus the 9th lord is there, as well as the 6th and the 11th. Venus is the yoga breaker here, and it is ruling the 6th and the 11th. We just want to be aware of any time that Venus is perhaps leading us into overindulgence of our egoic aspirations. But there are so many great house lords going through this sign of the 7th house. So we're expecting that we're going to have good relationship with others during this solar month for Sagittarius ascendant, perhaps going to feel well loved. The sun will be the 9th lord going through the 7th house, and it's looking for the sense of meaning and purpose. That's the sun as the 9th lord. That's wherever it goes. That's what it's going to be interested in for a Sagittarius ascendant. It's looking for it here in this place of communication and ideas. And really what it's hoping to achieve is to transact in relationship, to exchange value with others, including intimate partners. So this might be a chance when not only is the 7th lord going through the 7th house and the 1st lord is going through the 7th house, but also the 9th lord is going through the 7th house. So those are good numbers for relationships. So let's see how that goes. For Capricorn ascendants, Gemini is the 6th house. And once again, we are back with our cardinal ascendants. So we have a whole mix of Dushtana lords, as well as the 5th lord Venus, the 9th lord Mercury. And in fact, even Venus is actually also ruling the 10th. So there are some good trinal numbers there too. The sun going through Gemini for a Capricorn ascendant is the 8th lord in the 6th house. So that's probably a bit of a tricky combination. It's like enemies and sudden changes mixed together. But perhaps that means we're going to defeat some enemies or overcome some obstacles or debts or delays, and maybe even have the courage to face any traumas or emotional disturbances. But by the same token, it could stir up worries and anxieties because of it being the 8th Lord going through the 6th house. And the sun here is trying to achieve that inner transformation. It's the 8th Lord for Capricorn. It's in an environment of communication and peers and exchange. And it's really looking for being worthwhile, the 6th of doing all of those daily tasks that we need to do. So how can we, through our daily routines, help heal any inner traumas that we have? That is perhaps a good way to use the sun this month for Capricorn ascendants. If you're an Aquarius ascendant, Gemini is your 5th house, and we have all of our financial lords here, and the sun is the 7th Lord in the 5th house. So a nice exchange of angular and trinal energy. We also have the 9th Lord here, which is Venus, and we have another angular Lord. Venus is also a 4th Lord. So there's the 4th, 5th, 7th, and 9th all here in Aquarius, as well as some financial houses. Once again, we have a yoga breaker, and the yoga breaker is going to be Jupiter for Aquarius. It rules the 2nd and 11th. We talked about this with Leo, that the golden handcuffs of feeling like the responsible thing to do is to work hard and earn this nest egg, these gains that we're going to reap. And that is not really in line with Aquarius Dharma, which is actually over here in Gemini, the 5th Lord, and down in Libra, the 9th Lord, is where Aquarius is going to get most of its sense of meaning and grace from. So be careful about feeling over responsible to earn. And the sun here is the 7th Lord. So it's trying to pursue partnerships. That's what the 7th Lord is about. It's in an environment of communication and exchange. And it's in Aquarius 5th house about legacies, maybe good at making deals, working on contracts, perhaps good at advising others and knowing how to read others. This has a lot of grace around our relationship with other people. So that might be a theme for Aquarius this month. And then finally in Pisces, we have the 4th house. Gemini is the 4th house. The 1st Lord is going to be here in the 4th house of inner contentment and total acceptance of ourselves, which gives us that sense of inner peace and our home. As well as that, as this is a mutable sign, we have all of our angles, but we do have the 3rd, the 6th, and the 8th. And in fact, the sun is the 6th Lord traveling through the 4th house. So the 6th Lord, the sun, is always going to be looking for what worthwhile daily actions can I contribute, that Arthur Lord. And it's doing that here in a sign of information for the purpose of gaining a sense of total acceptance, a sense of the self, so an inner sense of peace. And this is maybe a chance to overcome any emotional negativity through implementing really good daily routines, a chance to manage our emotions in a Mercury sign. And we are linking here our health with our inner contentment. So perhaps a solar month to implement one's routines. The sun might help us a little bit with our routines for health and feeling good inside of ourselves, feeling at peace inside of ourselves. All right. That has been a dynamic and stimulating tour around Gemini, which I'm sure that this month is going to be. Best of luck with all of the various house lords that are there and all of that energetic chemistry that's going on. And I look forward to seeing you next time we get together on the Vedic Astrology Podcast. Bye for now.